What's going on, everybody? Z here. Welcome back. We've got some spicy new information from Krafton. Now, this came out 2 days ago. I actually had already recorded a video, but I didn't like how the video came out. So I'm re-recording it now, and hopefully we're going to make it clean, concise, and to the point. Hopefully you all are having a wonderful day. I'm having a fantastic day, as always, but let's get into the news, shall we? So, Krafton, this is from Game Developer. I'm going to be touching on a couple of articles here, but this is from Game Developer. I'll have links to all this down below. Krafton CEO accused of forming a secret task force, Project X, to seize control of unknown worlds. This is the title that I think is the funniest thing ever. Now, I'm going to talk about this first, and then we'll do a little bit of a backstory. Actually, let's just kind of go through it so everybody knows what we're talking about here. Now, the ousted founders of Subnautica developer Unknown Worlds claim Krafton established a secret task force called Project X in an effort to delay Subnautica 2 and avoid paying a multi-million-dollar earnout tied to its successful early access launch. Now, this was a $250 million earnout based upon if they hit certain sales targets, which they believed and everybody believed they were going to hit with the release of the early access of Subnautica 2. With Subnautica 2 early access, I believe supposing to have released in August, that would have hit their sales goals. They would have been cut a check for $250 million. However, it was divided. That was how it was supposed to shake down. But in a pretrial brief filed by Fortis Advisors is the original three developers, the creators of Subnautica. That is who Fortis Advisors is. By Fortis Advisors, on behalf of the Unknown World co-founders Charlie Cleveland, Max McGuire, and Ted Gill, Krafton CEO Kim is accused of using any means necessary to delay the title in an effort to avoid embarrassment and potentially even save his job. The filing is the latest update in a very public legal spat between the former Unknown Worlds executive team and the studio's parent company, Krafton. The former claim they were unjustly fired after Krafton chose to delay Subnautica 2 to avoid paying the aforementioned earnout, $250 million possibly, despite the project purportedly being in good shape ahead of its proposed 2025 early access launch. Now, if you remember anything prior to this being delayed, everything was good to go. Developers said it was good to go. Play testers said it was good to go. There's kind of some information out there in the webs where you can like search some early access, stuff. You can kind of see what the game looked like in its current state. It looked like it was good to go. There really wasn't anybody saying that it wasn't good to go. Krafton, however, claims the three co-founders downloaded tools after it acquired Unknown Worlds that Subnautica 2 needs more time in the oven. It also said all three execs stole information that amounted to a blueprint for Subnautica on their way out the door. So this right here, this is a really brief overview of like what kind of happened in the allegations going back and forth. I'll talk about this a little bit here in a second, but let's kind of keep going through this and then we'll talk about that. So, quote, Krafton fired the founders and delayed the launch of Subnautica 2 to avoid paying the earnout. That is what the plaintiff alleged in its complaint. And that is what the evidence will show at trial. That is how the, end quote, reads the pre-trial briefing laying out the plaintiff's case. Quote, after Krafton's finance department in May 2025 forecast a base case earnout of $191 million, Krafton needed a way to cancel the earnout. So now the Krafton's finance department apparently decided, hey, according to our sales figures, they are going to get a payout around $191 million. That is what they're guessing. Now, this, I'm guessing, is before Subnautica 2 was delayed. Delaying Subnautica 2, I'm sure, was going to, hamper this quite a bit because a lot of sales were going to go into Subnautica 2 early access. $191 million for hitting the sales target. Now, this was agreed upon when Krafton purchased the company. This was an agreed upon thing. Krafton needed a way to cancel the earnout. Krafton is accused of initially attempting to persuade Unknown Worlds founders to delay Subnautica 2 based on now abandoned claims that the title was not ready for release. So if we remember back, the original case that Krafton was making was that we had to fire the original three developers because they were going to push Subnautica 2 in a very bad state, and it was going to be damaging to the IP, and that Krafton reserved the right to protect their IP. That was their initial defense, if you will. However, since then, they completely backtracked all of that, and that is no longer why they're saying they fired it. They moved on to another reasoning, which already doesn't look good. It already looks a little shifty. When that failed, Krafton purportedly established a secret task force dubbed Project X with a singular mandate: either make a deal with the founders over the earnout or execute a takeover of Unknown Worlds. So basically what happened is Krafton was saying, hey, go to them, Project X, go to them, renegotiate this payout so that way we don't have to pay this much. And if they refuse, we're going to just take over the team and get rid of them. That's what they were claiming. Now, this is where things get really spicy. Slack messages between Krafton CEO Kim and Unknown Worlds newly appointed CFO Richard Yoon, included in the pre-brief and posted below, appear to show the pair discussing the prospect of a takeover. So this is the CEO of Krafton talking to the newly appointed CFO Richard Yoon of Unknown Worlds. So Richard Yoon says, I had a phone call a little while ago. This time they're asking for $75 million for themselves and $40 million for the team members. Now, this is the original 3 is asking for this amount. The original 3 were coming to the table and saying, hey, we will renegotiate. What they were saying that they would take and that would be good is $75 million for themselves and $40 million for the team. They say they won't do it unless we negotiate the packages of the teams together. So from my understanding, the original 3 said, hey, we will work with you on this. This is what we want, and we want it all negotiated together so that way there's not like a separate pool for them and a separate pool for the team members. And my guess is that they were worried about the team members not getting as much, you know. So then Richard Yoon, again, this is the newly appointed CFO of Unknown Worlds. The bucket for the team members we are thinking of at present is $10 million. So they didn't want to pay anywhere close to what they were saying. They didn't want to pay anything close to what the original 3 were saying, hey, we would take this. They're like, no, we're not even going to pay that much. Richard Yoon then says to CEO Kim, it might be easier just to take over. And then the response from Kim, acknowledging this conversation, so there's no like plausible deniability or anything like that, set a date and send a letter if you need to send it in advance. So the agreed thing here, according to these messages, according to this, now I believe this is all part of the legal documents and stuff. I don't know how they got these, but that's hilarious. This right here basically just says, okay, they were talking about money. They tried to come to some kind of conclusion. They weren't even going to get close. They wanted to pay. It sounds like Krafton didn't want to pay anywhere near what they said they were going to. And they agreed, okay, let's just do the takeover. That's what we're going to do. Which is insane to me. That's absolutely crazy. And it's crazy that there's Slack messages to show it. Now, again, I don't know how they got these messages. I have no idea. But like it shows this stuff. Also, in a different picture of this, it actually shows email addresses. So here, let me pull up that one real quick. Okay, so I found it. So I don't know if these were, I don't know if they ever got scrubbed or if maybe different websites show different things. But here's the Slack messages again. And you could very well see that there is emails associated with this. Now, these are all company emails. So I don't think it really matters. But this one's through Kotaku, but like I don't know how they got these. It shows emails associated with them, so like I feel like there's some you can verify that. But anyways, that's really crazy. They specifically talked about taking over if they didn't agree to a payout. So all of this to me shows that hey, they didn't fire them because of oh, they downloaded tools on their way out the door, which again, they downloaded on the way out the door, which means they were already fired. So you can't say you fired them for something that they did after they got fired. You know what I mean? That doesn't really make sense. They obviously say they're not firing them because they're protecting the IP. They're not doing that. So like, I feel like right now they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what they're firing them for. They're trying to scramble for anything. And obviously, I believe the title of this article is that the Subnautica 2 publisher allegedly asked ChatGPT to find a way out of paying the co-founders. And even ChatGPT said it was going to be difficult. Again, I don't know how they have these records. But yeah, so even ChatGPT didn't know what to do. Now, what's crazy is literally just now, today, as I'm recording this, there's a new article from game developer Krafton wouldn't have bought Subnautica, the studio, if it had known the founders' alleged exit strategy, says the CEO. So right now, the court, all this stuff is going on right now, I believe. I believe it's actually happening as we speak. So Krafton CEO Kim claims the South Korean publisher would not have acquired Subnautica developer Unknown Worlds had he known the studio co-founder and game director Charlie Cleveland alleged intended to reduce his role post buyout. Kim's remarks were made during the ongoing trial between ousted Unknown Worlds co-founders Charlie Cleveland, Max McGuire, and Ted Gill, which is taking place this week in the Court of Chancery of the state of Delaware. Now, what's funny about this, I haven't even finished reading this article. Like, normally I read through all these. I haven't even finished reading this. What's funny about this says they wouldn't have acquired this if they knew about what was going to go on here about Charlie reducing his role. They already have information. Charlie and all them have information of this is what they wanted. This is what they pursued. They said, Krafton was like, hey, these are going to now be your roles. Their roles essentially weren't what they were before. And that is what they did. Like, it was agreed upon thing. This is crazy. I'm going to go through. I'm going to read this and we're going to talk about this. All right. So we read through this. Basically what's going on here, and I'll read through this, is it sounds like they're kind of double backing now. It sounds like this is actually testimony from Kim during the whatever's going on, right? They're questioning, they're talking, they're making their statements and stuff like that. Basically what it sounds like they're now double backing again to they're worried about the product. So again, remember before they initially said that they were worried about their IP and that is why they fired him. But then they said that that's no longer the reason. And then they said it was because they downloaded all these tools. But then they also at some point said it was because they abandoned their posts. So they have all these things. But again, they completely went away from the first one saying that they were worried about the game. But let me read what's going on here. So Cleveland, McGuire, and Gill wish to be reinstated at Unknown Worlds after being fired by Krafton earlier this year, which again, I think is a weird thing. I've said this is a weird thing the entire time, and it actually kind of talks about why it would be a weird thing. The trio claimed they were forced out by Krafton so the publisher could avoid paying a multi-million-dollar earnout tied to the successful 2025 early access launch of Subnautica 2, which has been delayed until 2026. They also allege that Kim worked to seize control of the studio by forming a secret task force dubbed Project X in an effort to protect his job, which is interesting because we've seen information, we've seen messages, we've seen stuff about this. So I'm curious like how they're going to go about saying, oh, well, that's not what happened. Or you know what I mean? How they're going to play this down when they have like evidence. So as far as I know, evidence showing them that they were already planning this. Krafton, however, claims the leadership team abandoned their posts. In a pre-trial brief filed by the conglomerate earlier this month, uploaded by a game developer on Scrap, Krafton accused the former execs becoming absentee landlords after purportedly downing tools and stealing confidential information on the way out the door. Again, we heard this before. We heard the Krafton saying, oh, well, they weren't even doing their jobs. They're not even part of this. So that's why we fired them. Even though it sounds like that's not exactly the case. And it also sounds like if, according to their agreement, that they couldn't fire them for no reason. They had to fire them for like, you know, they had to do something significantly bad before they could fire them. They couldn't just fire them for no reason. Otherwise, that wouldn't work out with the payout stuff. So testifying in court on November 18th, Kim stated that Krafton was unaware Cleveland and McGuire had stopped contributing to Subnautica 2. He also claimed both former execs were given the opportunity to return to their posts, but rejected the offer, and that Cleveland specifically was determined to pursue unrelated movie projects. They're really pushing this. They're really trying to push this whole thing. Notably, Kim repeatedly stated that Krafton would never have spent the initial $500 million on Unknown Worlds in 2021 had it known the leadership team would allegedly seek to abandon their posts. There wouldn't be any deal, replied Kim, when asked what would have happened if Cleveland had informed him before the acquisition that he wanted to stop making video games. There wouldn't have been any deal. Finally, Kim was asked whether Krafton would have granted the trio operational control of Unknown Worlds had it known Cleveland and McGuire would have allegedly abandoned Subnautica 2. The single purpose of Unknown Worlds is to make games. And if they are not making any games, I don't think there is no meaning for them to have any operational control. I don't think I would have given it to them, he replied. What's kind of funny, and like I can understand it, and I'm not discrediting that, but like Krafton would never have spent the initial $500 million on Unknown Worlds in 2021 had it known that those three were going to leave, which is interesting because I feel like this amount of money, which is still crazy. I feel like this amount of money is crazy. I feel like this is more so for the IP. They wanted Subnautica. They wanted that IP. They know the money they can make with it. That's what they wanted, to the point where we even saw them talking about making a movie that one of these three was working on because Kim said to pursue it. You know, that's what we've heard. So like to say, oh, well, if these people weren't going to go, then we wouldn't have made a deal at all. It's like, you weren't buying the company for those three. You're buying it for the IP. Let's be real here. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been nearly as much. I don't know. But like, I wouldn't say that there would be no deal at all. I believed that the fans would eventually get disappointed. So here's where they start doubling back to the first thing where they said, oh, well, we were doing it to protect our IP. We did it for the players. We did it to make sure that everybody was happy. Kim also questioned why Krafton would now allow the former executives to return to their post. These are people who rejected our proposal for them to return to their posts. So why would we like them? Why would they like to return now? And what are they going to do? I'm not sure about that, which is a very good, it's a valid point. I don't know why they want to go back to working for the company that has already treated them like this. Like there's already no trust. They already know the shady tactics that they're trying to operate in. Like, why would you want to go back for them? I don't know. And currently the development team is pretty stabilized and they are working on the development in earnest. So I am concerned about if their potential return, if they do return, and thirdly, the trust, I think already broken. So I don't think we're in a state that we can, or we can be ready or can work with them again. So saying, no, we can't work with them again. We can't have them come back to the job, which I kind of agree with, like from both sides. Like I don't think the original three should want to go back there. And I don't think Krafton would take them back either. But like, I also don't know what that means for Subnautica. And I don't know what that means as like the best option going forward. As for whether Subnautica 2 was primed for a 2025 early access launch, as the former leadership team claims, Kim said Krafton could probably have generated some sales had it pushed ahead with the original plan, but suggested the title lacked freshness in its current guise. Because the fans already had a lot of expectations for the sequel, so there might be some sale that would occur initially, continued Kim. But because of the lack of content, the lack of freshness, I believe the fans would eventually get disappointed. And if that was the case, then actually the future of the franchise would be greatly impacted, was what I was thinking. That is exactly what they said originally. They said they were worried about the IP. They tried to use that as a reason for firing the original three. And then they completely backtracked on it to the point where they said, when asked by a judge, they said, oh, that's not the reason. That's not on the table anymore. They completely backtracked all of that. Now that's being brought up again. Kim's testimony chimes with the below statement provided by Krafton when approached for comment on the trial. So this is Krafton, and they approached Krafton about the trial. The trial is currently ongoing, where we are making the case that the decisions we have made were all about ensuring the best possible experience for our players. As we have made clear, we were forced to make a change when the former leaders showed little interest in the development of Subnautica 2, which has always been our top priority, a Krafton spokesperson said. Now, this trial comes down to plaintiffs asking to be restored to jobs they were not doing, said they had no interest in doing, and had previously declined requests that they come back to do those jobs. We look forward to continuing to present our evidence before the judge and are confident we will prevail and be allowed to continue our incredible progress. They are saying, essentially, that the original three abandoned their post, they asked for them to come back, all this stuff, which we've seen multiple times and we've heard multiple times. However, we haven't really seen any evidence of it, but I also don't think we're going to see any evidence from the Krafton side. I think Krafton's going to keep all their stuff as sealed as they can, and I think they're going to keep it to themselves until this all comes down. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean do they have all these documents? Do they have all this proof of stuff? I have no idea. However, all I do know is what we have seen, what we have heard, the way Krafton seems to be acting, the fact that they keep going back and forth, they're wishy-washy. Oh, well, we fired him for this. Well, never mind, it was this. Well, actually, it was this still. Like, this doesn't sound like the truth. This sounds like a lie. This sounds like a lie they're trying to come up with to save face. That's what it sounds like. So now, again, the trial will last through November 19th, which is actually today, after which both parties will submit post-trial briefings. A post-trial argument has been set for January 9th. The court's decision will follow. So January 9th will be a post-trial argument, and the court's decision will follow after that. I have no idea what's going to happen here. Again, I think it's really weird that they want to go back to Krafton. I don't understand this. Leave a comment. Let me know. Maybe you guys, maybe somebody out there, you guys have a better understanding of this, or you can see this. You can see this. I can't see a situation in where those three returning to Krafton is a good thing either way. I don't think it's going to be good for them, and I don't think it's going to be good for Krafton. I don't think it's going to be good for, you know, it's going to cause tensions. It's going to be weird. So I'm curious as to like what's actually going to happen here. Now I hope the best for everybody. Also, as always, the developers, the team actually working on Subnautica 2, I fully support them. I hope they are making an amazing game. I'm excited to take a look at it. It's extremely unfortunate what Krafton is doing here, but I don't want any anger directed towards the developers, towards like Unknown Worlds. Unfortunately, I do see in their Discord, I've been in their Discord quite a bit, you know, popping around looking to see if there's anything new. And it seems like sometimes people come in there heated towards the Unknown Worlds team when it's like it's not really them. It's, you know, it's their parent company, unfortunately. So I'm fully supportive of the developers. I want to see what they make. You know, I'm excited for it. I've always loved Subnautica, but I'm definitely excited to see what happens here. I'm excited to see what happens with Krafton, what happens with the original three, and where this goes. Are they going to get stuck? Are they going to have to pay out what they said they're going to? Are the original three not? Does something come out saying that they did abandon their jobs? Like, I have no idea. Anything can happen at this point. So, but that's what's going on. The Secret Task Force Project X, I think, is pretty rough. I think it's going to be very, very, very rough for a judge. Like, hey, you obviously were planning a takeout or a takeover. This was prior to like a whole bunch of stuff, and like it looked like you were planning on doing this from the beginning. So like you can't say, oh well, we fired him because of this. It's like, no, you were planning a takeover. You didn't need a reason. You were just trying to figure it out. So I don't know. I think the Project X thing is going to be very interesting. I think the whole Slack message thing is very interesting as well. But leave your comments. Let me know what you think, and I'll stay as up to date as I can. Again, apologies. This video was like 2 days old, but guess what? We got a new article in the process. So you guys have a wonderful one. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think is going to happen? What is your best outcome of this? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.